know that one of our trustees emailed. She actually is at a city council liaison meeting right now that I just left, so she won't be able to join us. And then I think we'll just go from there. Okay, so Mr. Samora, if you could have us go live. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Sorry we had a little bit of a late start. We wanted to make sure that we had as many folks from the task force able to join us. We know we will have some folks join us shortly. It's a busy time. And again, thank you all for your time and really your dedication for coming to these meetings. I know there's a lot that is going on right now in many of our households, our schools, and with our families. So hoping you all are safe and taking care. So um, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to share my screen. And I always have to transition between Zoom and and also Google Meet. So just a second. Okay, and I can't see you all, so just give me a little bit of a, let's see if I can get started here. Okay, so just a really brief organizer, and Christy, if you can let me know if there's questions as I'm going through because I can't see you all. But wanted to share that as an organizer for tonight, we are going to have information that I'm going to share today with all of you. And then I'm going to have representatives go through and share information that they have gotten from their constituencies, from their groups, from parents, from other teachers, from certainly other staff and community members, and have an opportunity to have that input given as well. I also had some questions that were sent in. Some today, I think some yesterday, but it's been kind of trying to get that all answered. So I will also answer those questions. I got those out to you about probably 45 minutes ago, but just with so many things going on. But I'll also read the questions and have the answers at the meeting as well. And then we'll go from there, because the outcome for today is to come to a consensus and a recommendation for our Board of Education as we are advisory to them. So the first thing I want to share is a little bit about the process. So just to kind of regroup and get us back into the room, today is going to be an opportunity to get input from you all, information that you all have had. You all had the time to hopefully share the results of the survey. We know there were some community meetings and certainly even just speaking with other colleagues at the school. So that will be a time for today to get that input from you all, and with the outcome of coming to a consensus on the recommendation to the Board of Education, to which we are advisory. I want to also share, as part of our work with our board and with our community, when we have decisions such as these, we want to also be able to give time for our board of trustees to have the time to really delve through all of the information and get the time to really make a strong decision around this. So as you can imagine, we all have met for many times already this year and certainly in the past, but for this year, and to be able to do this in just one meeting, I think would be a disservice to the process. So on February 9th, we will, staff, myself and Dr. Rocha will be making a recommendation that will be presented to the board with the outcome from today. The board item is going to be an information discussion item for our board to ask more questions, to really gain information around this. And then they may also provide us with additional direction. And then the second meeting in February 23rd, we will come back to the board, and that is when the board will take action on the recommendation. And if you've been watching our board meetings, we have kind of started to take this process as it relates to a lot of our plans and some of our work. And we appreciate that we have board members who are representatives on a lot of our task forces and committees. It's not the whole board. So this way, everyone will have some time to really digest and gain some of the same insight and input that we've had so far. And I'm going to now, so the rest of the slide deck is really kind of an organizer for us. And I'm just scrolling through so you can see it. And what I want to do with this organizer, and I'm going to stop sharing now, if I can, just a second. There, have I stopped sharing? Or do you, yeah, perfect, thank you. is that now we're going to, I wanted to kind of set that stage, set the parameters so you have that background, and we'll go from there. So the next step will be that I want to hear from each, and I know some of you are, we have several teachers here, and maybe, and then we have our principals and we have our parents. So we would hear from folks, just kind of insight and input as to what you heard at your community meetings. We all are getting a lot of emails as well. I think that's very important, and that also helps us as well. But I'm going to have Christy also take some notes so that we can also share this information with the board once we bring forward the recommendation. So I know I had put principals to go first, but is there representatives who would like to go first? Otherwise, I'm going to pick on our principals. Okay, I'm gonna pick on our principals. So, okay, thank you both for going first. So, we're just gonna be taking notes. So just kind of inside input that you've heard, that you've received, and maybe what I'll do is I'll start with Judy Nye, and then we'll hear from Carol after that.
Okay, and I'm going to invite anyone, many of the Spanish immersion people were at the meeting, so please chime in. But overall, the first thing I noticed was that parents were very pleased with each of their school sites. New families, existing families were thrilled with the education that their children are being provided. So that was really nice to hear. We talked a little bit about consolidation versus unification. And, no one wants a consolidation of the program just for, various reasons. We want a unification to make the program stronger. So that, I think that seems to inform some of the newer families that don't have the background of everything that's happened in the last 5 to 6 years. It was also noted that survey was only the people that responded. So some people that did not respond were able to give their opinions. A lot of concerns were transportation, leaving their homes, their schools that they're at now. And I know that that's been on both cases. Transportation is an issue, and daycare is also an issue and a concern from many of our parents. The overall summary, as I took it away, is that the program is very important, that they wish to strengthen and grow the program, that we were able to answer some of the questions that evening that maybe put their mind at ease as to the unification and the reasons why we want unification, and that the newer families now have some more of the background information. We talked about the different school sites and the declining numbers of students, especially at the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade levels. Some parents said, well, why don't we just put the 4th, 5th, and 6th grades to the 3 schools together? And we talked about, is that unification or is it consolidation? And I'm not going to answer that question. I'll let you answer it, Letty. But that was a discussion. I think I got all of my notes from the meetings. Very well attended. We have had about 100 families represented. And we had, I've sent to the task force this kind of a summary, a couple of email summaries. So anybody that was there that wants to add to that, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And our teachers and our parents will have another opportunity to share out. But I think that I appreciate that perspective and that summary of your community meeting. Okay, Carol, go ahead.
And then at our meeting, it was also very well attended. We had about 180 participants representing families from both Azaveda and Blakeow that are now currently at Azaveda and Blakeow. It was actually a very good discussion, and both Keith and Brian were at the meeting also. So Keith and Brian, feel free to chime in anytime. There was quite a good discussion, both via oral conversation and quite a discussion in the chat. We, of course, were not able to answer all the questions in the chat, but I appreciate that both Brian and Shannon, from our representative from last year, and Keith did a good job in trying their best to answer the questions in the chat. There was a lot of conversation in regard to unification. What does it mean? Why? You know, there is a lot of discussion about why the program, the Mandarin Immersion program, is not able to remain at Azaveda and grow. And I think a lot of that, you know, from those of us who have been in with the program for quite a while, we've seen the growth happen at Azaveda. We've seen the buildings come in. We've seen the buildings built. And I felt, and Keith and Brian, you could correct me if I'm wrong, I felt as though not everybody was really aware that we were full at Azaveda now. And that's one of the reasons why we do have the 4 classrooms at Blake Cow, and that we are growing. There was definitely, as Judy had mentioned, a lot of love shown for the schools that the students are currently at. There was conversation from our teachers. May Fang spoke a little bit about what does it mean being at a grade level that is at both Blake Cow and Azaveda, and some of the difficulties with that. And there was some discussion amongst the parents of some different ideas of maybe how we could problem solve that. So there's also quite a bit of conversation in regard to the survey and the fact that not all of our families were able to respond and did respond. And we know that. And there was quite a bit of conversation in regard to teacher responses, because again, not all the teachers and staff members responded. And then conversations in regard to both Bringhurst and Blake House, since those are the 2 schools that we've talked about, and how some families are concerned if Bringhurst is the school that the Mandarin Immersion program goes to, that it is quite a bit out, you know, far out there in Fremont. And but then some parents did also share that they are also coming a distance to come to Blake Cow or Azaveda. So Keith, I don't know, do you have anything else that you'd like to share? Because there's quite a bit of discussion.
Yeah, what I'll add is I think that it was good to get everything out, give people space to speak. One thing I wanted to take a moment to clarify on is we had understood that the vote from the board would happen on February 9th. Isn't February 23rd very late in the process when we're going to be opening back up the onboarding around the first week of March? We just feel that's a really short time frame, and we thought the board was going to be voting sooner.
Yeah, and thank you for that opportunity to clarify that. So I have checked in with Student Support Services as it relates to extension of deadlines for people to apply for the program, where we will be able to extend that and work within it. I have also contacted our Human Resources Department as it relates to the process for our teachers and for staff, and what that, you know, what implications there may be there. So we should be fine with that, and essentially be able to work with that. And I think, as I shared before, it'll give our board that time to really have that discussion and provide direction to staff. So we should be fine with deadlines.
Okay, and I think maybe related to just the distance due to the pandemic, a lot of the newer parents who came in as a result of the expansion because of the board's decision to allow us to go from 2 strands to 4 strands, not having the tribal knowledge or the history, I don't think they understood, or I don't know how the communication went down from the district, but surprised that Blake Cow was possibly temporary on one hand, and on the other hand, not understanding the history about why Azaveda is out of space, or those types of questions that came up. Also, I know that we as a task force, there hasn't been anything official, but with information leakage, people have come to some assumptions about who goes where, which program goes to which location. So I'm just hoping that, in full transparency, just tonight is the right time to kind of get all that out in the open, so everyone knows that the information has been available, whether people knew how to get to the information or not.
Yeah. And it did seem to be, in my opinion, it did seem to be a very good learning experience for all of us, because those of us who were presenting, Principal Hernandez and I, and our task force members who were also there. I think we got to hear from the public in what they did not understand of what was going on. And even though like we are all trying our best to communicate this out, I think it just shows a need that we can always do better, to be honest. And I felt that from just some of the questions from parents who felt like this was very new news. And I know, and as Keith said, you know, a lot of they were our newer parents, but still, I kind of wished at the end of that meeting that we had just been able to do a better job of explaining everything that was going on. And the fact that we all know that Blake Howe was only a temporary fix, I felt bad in that it was clear that not everybody understood that. So, but it was a very good discussion. So
Thank you for that. And you know, the outcome and, you know, and our next steps, I think will definitely speak to our communication plan. And that might be something we also, if time allowing, it may be something we talk about here as well at the end of, as some of our next steps. Okay, let's go to, who would like to go next? Would some of our teachers like to go next, or our parents to give other perspectives, or to validate, or to have questions? Who would like to go next? Victoria.
I was just going to say that among our teachers, a lot of them, pretty much they all said that they would be willing to like move if that was the case. But a lot of them were sad about it, right? They were not necessarily wanting to leave their community, but understood that, you know, that unification would make our program stronger, and many were willing to do that. So it just sounds like they're on board. Wanted to share that.
Thank you.
The same with the group at our school at Vallejo Mill. We've been talking from the beginning, and most of us are for unification. A couple of the concerns that came since last week, it's the communication to some of the parents. They didn't know about the meetings, or they weren't informed, or even like the timeline. When will this happen and why? So the communication was something that some parents were emailing me about, with just being better informed. And the other thing is that a couple of parents also were concerned about the amount of responses that of parents that are not willing to go to a new school. They're concerned that if we unify, will we lose our program? Will the program become even smaller? So that was another concern too. Now I just have, one of the teachers just texted me, and she wants to know if whatever school that, if we do go for unification, whatever school that will be housed at, will this be our permanent school, or is there still a possibility of us having a full immersion program with the whole school being immersion, or is that going to be off the table?
Yeah, no, at this point, what we are planning for is a unification of the strands, but we know we will still have neighborhood students in the other option, which is the default for them would be the English only. So yes, it would not be the full immersion. It would be to unify the strands.
Okay. So just to, and then one clarifying question. So on February 9th at the board meeting, you guys are going to present what the outcome will be. Do you think that they'll make that decision, or they have to make that decision that night?
No, so let me clarify. Good question. So the purpose of tonight, our meeting tonight, as we are advisory to the board, is to present a recommendation of unification, of sites, and on all of that. The board will take it as an information discussion item. And what I had shared earlier was, although we have some wonderful representatives from our board that've been here, not all of the board has been able to participate in all the meetings, and perhaps and will need that time. So the February 9th meeting, the recommendation will be presented, and it'll be a discussion information. The board then may give more direction to staff and have that opportunity, but no vote will take place on the 9th. The vote will take place at the second February meeting, and then that's when we'll come back with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, let's go with our MIP teachers. Would any of our MIP teachers like to share next? Okay, go ahead. I just saw a hand. I'm sorry, my screen is doing something funny. Oh, there you are. Yes, please go ahead, Ms. Fang.
Hi, I just want to share for Mandarin immersion, I get a chance to talk to some of the teachers, not all of them. It's pretty much the same as the Spanish immersion teachers. We feel very sad that we are going to leave Veda. We don't want to change, to be honest. Moving and changing classroom is going to be a lot of work for the teachers. But seems like unification can really make our program stronger, so that so most of the teacher say yes for the unification regardless where the location is. But I do hear different voices from the parents. A group of parents strongly support of the unification, while another group of parents is still thinking like probably 2 locations should be fine for Mandarin immersion program. Yeah, so that's so far what I heard from the community.
Thank you very much. Any other input from our Mandarin immersion teachers? Okay, I don't see it, but I do have a question from Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
Hi, let me just supplement a little bit what Keith and Ms. Fan have said. In terms of the MIP reaction to the proposed unification, I think in terms of the spectrum, on one end of the spectrum, there are parents that are very gung ho. They support the unification regardless of location. On the other end of the spectrum, you have people who are very much against unification and they want the program to stay as is, especially as of Ada. And then you have the wide middle, people who want to do right by the program, but they are also concerned about their personal inconvenience, their potential disruption to their lives. And it's a fine balance. So the recommendation, I hope, will take into account of all the different competing interests and really do a balancing job. And I think for the people in the middle, they would prefer, of course, things they'll prefer to minimize disruption to their lives. And if unification has to happen, I would think Blackout probably is their preferred choice.
Thank you for that. And yes, I think it is definitely going to be a balancing act, but at the same time, what I appreciate and I'm hearing is, what is good for the sustaining and the growing of the program. So I am hearing that thread throughout. So I do appreciate that, but I definitely recognize it will be a change for some. It may be a change for all. So that is going to be something that, when we're thinking about the communication plan, I think it's also that acknowledgement of the change, but then also I do appreciate the, keeping in the forefront how this will strengthen both programs. So thank you for that. Let's transition to, and then I'll come back with if there's anything else from MIP parents, but let's go to SDI parents because I haven't heard from Patty nor Melissa, and that way they can share some information. Go ahead, Patty.
Buenas noches. I think everything that has been mentioned thus far kind of resonates with my own conversations with parents. I did have sort of a split set of parents. I had one parent who's in a district parent, and the concerns were for before and after school care for the sites, given that the current sites don't provide one, like Grimmer, Blackout, etc. There was a lot of emphasis on a website or some sort of communication network for SDI families, where we can just have like one sole source of information and that be made available as soon as possible, so we don't have to navigate through websites and emails, all of that. And for this parent in particular, it was, since they're in a district, is that the notification of an assigned school being so late into the summer. And so obviously with the decision being made to be notified immediately so that they can arrange, transportation, etc. For my in-person meeting, it was very much younger, lower grades, and it was clarification on the process, share some history on the program and the efforts being made thus far to Unified. The upper grade parents were very much on, come back once the site is unified, because we have a list of things that we want to do and we want to be part of to get the program going. And so there, as you know, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders have kind of gone through this whole unification effort the last couple years. So they're pretty much on just tell me where to go and then what I can do. There was one parent that sent a letter that I share with you guys, expressing leaving the program and the reasons being traffic and distance, which kind of resonates with majority of the parents that are supportive of the unification efforts, but with transportation being a big issue. And so I wanted to address that. On my personal opinion, I do, as you know, I benefited from bilingual education, and I'm very grateful that my kids are doing so as well, and I support unification 1,000%. But my concern for the unification at this point is that at least for the next 5 years, given the SDI enrollment that we have on the table, this one, I crunched some numbers, is that our classes will be pretty much capped. And so there's really no assuming best case scenario, the entire enrollment, there will be very little cushion for growth other than the lower grades. So for my kids that are in 1st and 2nd grade, moving forward with the 2 strands in the classes being divided up, there's really no room for that. So that concerns me a little as to at what point are we going to begin, seeing the program grow. So as we begin to generate this recommendation to the board, I do want a commitment from members of the administration and the district here, as well as for the board, to have a level of commitment and begin to consider recruiting and retaining efforts to the program, and identify ways that we can establish like a communication network that can facilitate that two-way conversation with parents and information, as well as getting to know our other families from Blackout or Grimmer or Ever, so that there can be one place where we can begin to talk to them and the teachers. Another one was technology support for families and non-Spanish speaking parents, and teacher support services. So I kind of want all of you guys to think, where do we see the SDI program in 5 years? And kind of have that be laid out in the recommendation in terms of, the level of a commitment that we expect moving forward. Other than that, it was, I encourage parents to submit letters and any other questions. And what I've mentioned is what I've received so far. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Melissa, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
I think Patty summarized it very concisely and addressed most of everyone's concerns. in regards to unification and the decision of where SDI goes. Just as I mean, I 100% agree with everything Patty said, but just on my personal level, as being on the task force since the beginning, I would just like to, I guess, express that the decisions that will be made in the future does affect everyone, and just to, you know, not everyone will get what they want, but it's not about what we want right now. It's what we want the program to continue. The history of this program has been, you know, for 30 plus years in Fremont, and we want the program to go beyond my own children. I have one child not leaving the program, but going into the junior high program this upcoming year, and I still have a first grader. So it still affects me, but at the same time, I do want to see this program continue in our Fremont community. And I know some people, you know, they just want, you know, they want to stay at their school, or they don't want it, you know, to affect it. But I think as parents, we want this program to continue, but just that we know that the decisions that are going to be made will affect it both positively and negatively for our families in the program. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Angelica, you raised your hand. Did you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, no, I just have another question, and I think I've already asked this one. I know that we're talking about distance and how far, and transportation will not be provided, and that's something that we can't. It's not in our budget, right? For as far as transportation.
Transportation, no, that is
Okay.
not part of
Just
it. But I-
wanting to
yeah.
double check. They keep on people keep like with daycare and everything else. These are, I think, some concerns that some of the parents too. So somebody just asked me that, but thank you.
Thank you. Keith and Brian, anything else to add for the MIP parents' behalf or information?
Just a list of questions that I submitted to you.
I'm going to cover those. Yes. Should I just go ahead and start with that now?
Sure.
Okay, cool. All right. So we some of the questions you all got them in writing, but I think it's important because our folks that are watching don't know the questions, although some of them may have asked the questions. So I wanted to briefly go through some of them, and I appreciate Angelica also submitting some of the questions she's hearing now. So the first one was around Blake Howe, and also about the number of classrooms, and ultimately the question is about space, and is FUSD certain that there will be sufficient capacity for a unified MIP to grow at Blake Howe? And this was all like in the big package of the SDC, our special day classes there, in English only. So this is our response. There is space for the MIP program at Blake Howe, but we want to ensure that there is the most optimal space for continued growth. So what I mean by that is right now, if we were to unify the two strands at Azaveda and at Blake Howe to Blake Howe, there is space. But there is also some new information that's coming out that we are just learning about in the last couple of weeks. And as that relates from the California Department of Education, is that all districts, including Fremont, we're going to have to start to make some decisions about full day kindergarten. And the nice thing is that there's possibilities of grants and funds that are out there for full day kinder. But at this point, because it's happening so quickly, we have to have a ramp up time. This is not for next year. So I want to make sure that everyone knows this is not for next year. But there has to be a plan that is started. And we are going to be engaging with our teachers, with our families, with the community, and certainly our staff, and most importantly, our board. And what I say with that is that our board has to give us some direction as it relates to full day kindergarten and really what those plans are. So I want to make sure that we're aware of that will have an impact on facilities across the district. I know we're speaking specifically about Blake Howe in this sense, but when I start to look at the optimal space for MIP for growth and expansion, Blake Cal can handle the 2 strands right now. The concerns and the questions that are out there is the possibility of full day kindergarten, and also if there would be other growth. So the next question I have is, has there been a change of plans to relocate RIC students from Blake Cal? What is the status on relocating them? So there have been no changes. We are still planning to move the students that are participating in the RIC's preschool program, and they are projected to move to their new site in the new school year. So they will be moved out and not at Blake Cal next year. So now we have some other questions about Bringhurst. Does Bringhurst have facilities for an on-site after-school care? Many MIP families, and we're also hearing this from our SDI families, are from different parts of, this says North Fremont, but other parts of Fremont, and commuting to and from Bringhurst won't be easy. So this is very important. So I want to let you know, at Lila Bringhurst, there is no special space that has been designated for after-school care. But, and I should say and, there is space there for it. So the process would be that our site administrator, working with staff at the district office, with business services, and with our families in the community, if this is a want, and I offer this also to the SDI families, if this is a want at the site, we will go through a process of an RFP to have an outside provider come on to the campus to provide after school care. So I know this came up also for the SDI families, and it's important. And you have that absolute option that can be part of the planning that that we would be working to have an after school provider at the sites. So I wanted to clarify that. And I think that
Latia, may I just interrupt real quickly about that topic, because I have experience with the YMCA program at Grimmer, and the only reason they aren't there is because of low enrollment. If there was a sufficient enrollment, they would be there.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that's what we would support with the 2 site administrators to help them navigate that process of what would be best for the family. So wherever the program is, we can definitely look at that. And the power of having, again, the unification is the opportunity to have an after school care. So yes. Next question. Is it possible to arrange for busing? So we've answered this question. So no, unfortunately, there is no transportation available for students that do not participate in our special education programs. Is it possible to, how much of the space at Bringhurst is contractually reserved for Native students, or I'm assuming this means neighborhood school students that live in the Bringhurst area? Will MIP have to move again if the neighborhood student population grows and Bringhurst runs out of space? So to share with all of you, as you know, through the email I sent out, so our board did take action and approve the opening of Lila Bringhurst. We would, per the information that I have, the district does meet, will be meeting on an annual basis with the developer to determine the number of students that would be the neighborhood students for the site for Lila Bringhurst. So I want to say that we do not anticipate moving the MIP program if the MIP program were to go there. I'm answering the question, or the SDI program if it was there. The school has the capacity for 1,100 students. And so it sounds like, well, I know that based on those numbers, we don't see that. And I see Trustee Sweeney has his hand up.
Oh, please call me Larry. Letty, thank you. Yeah, I was just going to point out the 1,100 is the capacity that the board negotiated with, and right now the native students, for lack of a better term, those students who were generated from that attendance area, is less than 200. So just to give more numbers to you, that there's plenty of room for growth for everybody.
Thank you for that. Yes. Okay, the next question is around, these are around Azaveda and the priorities for homeschool. Will Azaveda be at risk for closure if MIP leaves? So I want to be clear about that. At this point, all of our schools have their own unique programs, and we also have other district programs within our district that we look at, where are we going to house them from year to year. And so there are no plans to do that. We annually review where we place programs and for our students. And that can range everything from we have special programs as it relates to special education, but we also have other programs within our district. So at this point, that is not part of the discussion that we're looking at, but I appreciate the question. And certainly once we start to balance out these schools, you will not balance out the schools. Once we start to see the numbers with the unification, we anticipate that the numbers will be there. We also do want to recognize that we are in declining enrollment, but then that is also speaking to how unifying these programs will bring more students into Fremont that want to participate in our wonderful classes. If MIP leaves Azaveda, what will happen to the homeschool priority that Azaveda families currently enjoy? People have bought homes there in anticipation that their young children will have priority in the program when they reach kindergarten age. Will the homeschool priority for Azaveda stay for at least a few years? Will there be homeschool priority for families living in the Bringhurst or Blake Howe neighborhoods? The homeschool, so here's what we're looking at right now. And I want to share with you all that and we also, let me actually read the next question because I think that pretty much captures what some of our plans are right now. Some have questioned the need for having a homeschool priority for MIP. What is the justification for favoring a particular neighborhood for a program intended for the entire Fremont? And the exact words were, wherever the program's up, would the district be willing to consider making the slots for program lottery only, no homeschooler area advantage? Sibling priority is necessary in my opinion, and I don't see a way around that. So I want to share with all of you is, we're trying to take one step at a time, but we also want to share information so that families are aware of this. So what we're looking at right now, and certainly we would be sharing this with our board, is that students who are currently enrolled in the program obviously would continue in the program. Wherever the program unifies, they continue in the program. So there's no new paperwork that has to be done or any of that. Siblings would continue to have priority for the incoming kindergarten classes. And that's our current practice, because I want families to know that if we're unifying at one site and they have a kinder child that's coming up, they will still continue to have that priority as a sibling for our families. And what we're looking at right now is looking to employ a lottery system for new students. We're going to be sharing this information with our board at the February meeting, but at this point, this is our planned recommendation. And I think it would really substantiate that these are district programs. And with that said, it allows for families to feel like, okay, so the sibling priority is there, so I'm feeling good about that. But at the same time, I also know that it'll be part of a lottery for the slots. So I wanted to share that information. That will be coming to our board in the February meeting as well. There was a question about who will be the principal for Bringhurst. Can someone describe the person? So the board has already selected a principal in years past, and that is Ms. Johanna Cho, and she's going to be the principal for Lila Bringhurst. She is an extremely experienced, wonderful administrator, and she's going to do really well. And we will continue to support her as we would with any of our principals, but know that we have already selected a principal for Lila. I'm going through the questions, sorry. Also, can we get confirmation that it's not possible to house 4 full strands of MIP at Blake Howe? There is so this is the same question as before, that one of the first questions about can Blake Howe really hold the full MIP program? So my answer is the same. So there is space for the current MIP strands unifying, but I want to also be aware of the consideration that Blake Howe would have a sort of cap in the expansion, which means current state. Lila would not have that cap because candidly, there's a lot of room and a lot of space there. We have, I think it's 8 kindergarten classrooms, if I'm not mistaken, that are a part of the school there. And so, with the bathrooms and the whole full shebang there. So there is space there. But I wanted to make sure that people understand that. And because we are in the beginning planning phases for the possibility of full day kindergarten moving forward in the years to come, that will have an impact on all of our sites, but it will have an impact at Blake Howe as well. Okay. So those are the questions that I had. Is there anything else that I can clarify or Christy can clarify?
Well, hi, Letitia, it's Keith. Just to clarify what the topic just was on, does Blakeo have technically enough space to house MIP as it's configured today? Are we, because it's going to come up, is there enough space to house MIP with all just four fully populated strands without requiring any more movement of existing programs? Or that's with the assumption that you have to move other programs out?
Yes. So with the current, and Christy can jump in and clarify for me, but with the current situation we have right now, knowing that some of our classes at the upper grade levels also are not full classes. So I want to make sure that folks are aware of that. So from our configurations we looked at, it looks like we would need, is it 19 classes, Christy?
Let me look that up. Hold on.
Okay, while she's looking that up. But there would have to be a cap on expansion. And so it would have to, if we were to unify there, that would be the cap. And then the others would be the whole thing around full day kindergarten. And so that is, I think, something we do need to recognize is the full day kinder. With the SDI, we do not have the same constraints there. We do anticipate being able to fully house the three strands because of the number of students and even allowing for some growth there. Go ahead, Brian.
Hi, I remember there was a slide that was passed around before, and basically for MIP to be unified, we will need 22 classrooms. So are you saying that if we unify at Blakeo, we'll be capped at 19 classrooms?
I'm going to let Christy look at the numbers. And yes, we have, and those were the slide. Were those the ones from last year or this year that we gave?
This year.
Okay, thank you. That way she can find them. Thanks. Yeah, it was like a ramp up.
I'm just going to talk.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so while we wait for her to look.
I was going to just
Go
talk
ahead.
to the arithmetic because this is a very important part of what our discussion is.
Sure.
4 full strands of either MIP or SDI, fully populated, including our calculations for class sizes and people remembering that from kindergarten on up, the class sizes expand. If you had 4, you would never have 4 fully populated classes in that kindergarten has a lower class number. So 4 full strands, you'd need 22 classes, and that's assuming that kinder stays where it is now. We're not going to full day. If you go to full day, it's actually 24 classes. But I think what Letitia is saying is the reality is that in the upper grades for both programs, we have attrition. And so you might not need 4 classes, you need 3. So that's where people are probably questioning, like, why do we 19 classes or just 22? 19 is probably the practical need right now, but 22 would be the full need, and then 24 if kinder goes to a full day. So I just want to get it out there so people know that we've actually done this analysis.
Thank you for that. And I'm remembering your email right now, Keith. So yes, you're correct on that. And Christy can validate it, but it's true. So we would, go ahead, Christy, you're about to say something.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going back and forth between slides. So currently, when I look at our enrollment and based on the information that we had shared, the enrollment, as Keith mentioned, is not to its full capacity in upper grade. And because of that, we wouldn't need per se 4 classes because of the enrollment is not fully at the 30-to-1. So yes, there would be a need. Sorry, I've got so many screens up, so I'm going back and forth here. Where we wouldn't potentially need the 4 full classes for upper grades based on the enrollment not being to that full capacity.
But that is now for current state.
That is for current state. That is correct.
Current state. And so that is part, I think, of going back to Keith's point, that is really the important distinction we need to make. And as we're planning, and like I said, I want this to be a decision that we're also able to recommend that will allow for the possibility of I mean, to be honest, both of these programs are rich, wonderful programs that offer kids so many different possibilities and will also be attracting and growing. And so, in order to do that, and now with the new information of the full day kinder, that is, I'll be candid that I have some hesitancy about the MIP program at Blake Howe. But if it were current state, yes. But I do have some questions and we can discuss it more about expansion but certainly there would need to be a cap. So I see Patty raised her hand and then we'll see if there's any other hands around this.
I remember when we were looking at the table that had the projections, this one right here, also part of the conversation was the amount of rooms needed plus the assumption that the 6th grade will move out of the middle school. So that played a role in not having those extra rooms available. And that was by 2023, so next fall, I think. But anyways, that's what I have on notes on my table.
Thank you. Larry.
Thank you. One of the things that we have a tremendous opportunity for those of us who have been involved in this for years, and especially the last 2 years, is what we've done is piecemeal to try and put things together so we can keep the program going. Different schools here and there, knowing it can't grow here, knowing there might be a cap there. We now have an opportunity to possibly put the 2 programs into 2 different locations where they can both expand and grow. And that's going to be that's a very rare opportunity for us to have. So I think while we're looking at what the programs can do right now and how they can grow, I think when we start adding in the ideas that there will have to be caps and stuff, that's kind of counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish here, which is to solve this problem for at least, let's say, the next 10 years. And who knows, because we've been facing this with a rapid growth. So I just want to bring that in because it is so important. Everybody's put so much time into it that if we can look with the eye of not having a cap, I think we'll better serve ourselves and the future students as we proceed, and the robustness of the program.
Thank you. So any other questions or comments? Oh, Angelica, were you going to say something?
Yeah, okay. So I'm not sure if I'm hearing this right. So could we put the MIP program at Lila and then the SDI program at Blake out, and will we have a decision by now? I mean, just like what we need to like now say, okay, as a parent that went through this, as a teacher that went through this, are we just going to say right now, like, this is our recommendation? You know, I'm looking at the clock and I just want to be able to go back and tell, I have my group text going on here with the teachers, but also tell, you know, Patty and I can go back and tell our community and everybody else can tell their community. I mean, I'm doing the math right here in my head. I don't have it. Would we be able to, I'm asking what the recommendation is going to be, I guess.
Right. So thank you for that segue. So I wanted to make sure we had all the questions out, all the input, and now, yes, looking at the clock, and I'm not trying to rush. We can add some time to our meeting, but I think at this point it is important for us to start to come to consensus. And if someone would like to make a recommendation, or if someone would like to just start to have that, I think Angelica started it off. What is the pleasure of the group?
I would like to make a recommendation. Having been on this group and on the Facility Advisory Committee for many years, I would recommend that the MIP be moved to Beringhurst and that SDI be moved to Blakeow.
And I'll take a second on that, and then we can have some more discussion. And honestly, it's not even going to be like a vote. I think we have to come to a consensus, right? So is there any big opposition to that? Or and I do want to say that you know, going back to, I think, some of the words that were shared at the beginning and some of the emails we got, we know that we're going to have to put in a very strong communication plan on this, and then also not just not about the message, but the next steps, right? And so would anybody else like to weigh in on this?
I'll second Judy Nye.
I'm also in agreement with that.
Okay. I'd like to hear from some of our MIP representatives as well.
I understand where Judy's coming from. I also understand Blackout is MIP parents, the majority of MIP parents' top choice. So I don't know. I mean, do we have to come to only one recommendation? Can we give option to the board of trustee to consider? In other words, given two options from MIP, saying that on the one hand we have Blackout, which comes with a limitation on the size cap, and then on the other hand we have Bringhurst, which may not be maybe a little further south for a lot of people, but will give us the room to grow. Can we give the board of trustee options for them to consider?
I think we can. I mean, I think, it will be important to give our board options. And, even the discussion tonight, knowing that there's a lot of, eyes wide open, there is going to be a cap at Blake Howe for the expansion. And I would want them to be aware of that. But at the same time, I think it'll bring some clarity to our next steps. So what I'm hearing is bringing forth some options for our board. So the recommendations would be that Blake Howe could fully house the SDI program and have expansion for growth. Lila could fully house the MIP program with expansions for growth. Grimmer could house the SDI program and have some expansion for growth. And Blake Howe could house the current state of the MIP program, but we would have some caps. Did I capture that?
Yes.
Okay, let's have some more discussion on that. How are you all feeling about that?
I'm wondering how much expansion for growth there would be for SDI at Grimmer.
I would question that as well, especially with the all-day kindergarten conversation.
Okay, so what we could do is, and now we will double check the classrooms, and I'll have Christy look at that with Judy. Is part of the proposal would include that there will be a cap at Grimmer for the SDI program, that it could absorb current state, very similar to what we're saying for MIP at Blake Howe, but there would have to be a cap at Grimmer for it. You got that, Christy, in the notes? Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Patty.
I want to express my support for unification of SDI at Blackout and MIP at Bringhurst. I do want to make sure that the recommendation includes a level of commitment for enhancing the SDI program immediately. And I don't know what that would read, but I do want to make sure that at least it outlines some of the concerns that have been addressed by parents related to the communication network, the technology support for families, and making sure that we have that established in order to facilitate recruiting and retaining of the program.
And I want to share, our board will receive all information. So that will be, it may not be part of the actual motion, because and remember this, the 9th is not for the motion, it's just the recommendation, but we will certainly capture all of this in the information to the board.
Agree.
Okay. Let's hear from others. Anyone else that has not had a chance to speak or to comment on this?
Yeah, this is Keith. So ultimately, I want to thank the task force and the board for commissioning the group, because I know this is our final meeting. So a couple things. My personal recommendation is still unification for both programs above all else. So that means not a split program for MIP. Location, I think, is going to be best determined on doing demand planning and knowing what the capacity, the realistic capacity is going to be over the next, as Larry said, 5 to 10 years. because again, if we're planning for something that's not going to be a reality, then we're over planning to some degree. Requesting that whatever happens, that although we're closing this task force, as we learned with the junior high expansion, that we would probably need at least 2, maybe 3 meetings next school year to make sure that everything is going smoothly. And in both unification efforts for SDI and MIP, that back to what Patricia just said, that there's full commitment in terms of the support logistics needed to make these programs successful, including curriculum, textbooks, technology, all the things we've learned in past expansion efforts. And again, want to thank this team for coming together the last 2.5 years to make this happen.
Yep, I second that.
And Keith, can I just add to that? I totally agree with you 1,000%, whether I'm involved or not. But we have to remember that this task force's goal is only to make the recommendation for unification and what sites. We would then have Christy and Letty organize an SDI MIP parent group to inform all of those things that you just raised.
Exactly. I'm well aware of that. Thank you, Judy. I'm just saying that because we might not have an opportunity, it might not even be this task force again. I just want to make sure it's recorded that we would want that for consideration as we move forward.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Noted. Okay, everyone. Also, on behalf of our superintendent, our board, thank you to all of you. This has been a lot of commitment, the long haul for so many of you, and I know you do it because we're keeping our kids and in the focus and what's good for our kids and for our staff. So, thank you all for your time. And so the next step will be that Christy and I will be putting this together. We will share it with our board. But for all of you to know that you can share, as Angelica had said, with your community, we will be bringing forward to the board some options, as was noted earlier. But we are, I think, I can definitely say we are pro-unification across this task force. And then we'll look at that. Okay. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you, Kelly, and thank you all. Have a good night.